Hey guys, Peter Franson here from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions, here to give you my thoughts on kind of like what I would categorize as the indie press conferences or showcase events of E3 2019, including Devolver Digital, Limited Run Games, and the Kind of Funny Games Showcase. We're going to go through them in that order, starting with Devolver Digital. This fancy press conference, as they've kind of been calling them, continues the saga begun by their first one from 2 years ago. The first 2 years, they lampooned the way that big video game companies like Nintendo, well, not Nintendo anymore, but Sony and Microsoft will have these big stage events and stuff, and just the little idiosyncrasies that come along with some of the suits that get up there and talk marketing speech and, you know, other interesting little tidbits. They did a really great job in those 2 years of capturing some of those things. I think sometimes they were a little too on the nose or went a little bit too far and they kind of lost me, but they definitely got some chuckles out of me. I should mention that for all three of these Digital Devolver press conferences, which all three are worth watching for the kind of the quote unquote story of them that continues throughout and continues into this one this year. They have a very dark sense of humor, very violent sense of humor, and a lot of like really rough language. So if you're going to be put off by either of those things, then it's probably not for you. But if those things aren't a problem for you, or if like me you have a really dark sense of humor sometimes, then you might get a kick out of them. Anyway, so they continued with their spoofing of RoboCop, but they pivoted maybe what they had originally planned to do this year. Instead of lampooning the typical press conference of E3, they decided to lampoon the Nintendo Direct style of a conference that is becoming, or event that's becoming more and more popular. More and more people are copying that Nintendo Direct model, and so they did their spin on it, and I thought it was just as effective in capturing some of the idiosyncrasies of those digital events as they did in previous years, mimicking stage shows. Let's see here, but what did they actually feature that caught my attention? The first one that really grabbed my attention is called Carrion, which I know almost nothing about. It's a reverse horror experience, and you play as some kind of, I almost want to say John Carpenter's The Thing style of gore monster that feeds on people or uses their biological matter to make itself grow and mutate, and it's just a bunch of writhing, bloody tentacles, you know, flowing around an environment. It's got kind of a 8-bit, 16-bit graphical style, but with some modern, you know, lighting effects and other niceties like that. It's coming to PC and console in 2020. It doesn't look, I mean, it looks like you just kind of swarm, you know, like roll around this environment on a 2D plane, just like absorbing people while they scream and run in horror. I don't know what makes it engaging or challenging or whatever, so I don't really have a sense of what makes this a game. But the theme has me totally interested in finding out what this game is going to be, because that alone, as long as the gameplay isn't totally annoying to me, might earn my purchase. Anyway, the next thing that caught my attention, not really because I'm personally interested in it, but because of the novelty of it, was that Devolver Digital is releasing an arcade cabinet for both commercial and private use. It's called Enter the Gungeon House of the Gun Dead, coming to arcade in 2020. That was really, really interesting to see them kind of carrying the flag for arcade cabinets. And then the last game in the Devolver presentation that got my attention was a repeat from last year, My Friend Pedro, which is a side-scrolling slow-mo acrobatic Matrix style shooter, and it looks really cool. I'm just really curious about how it controls. I'm guessing you move maybe your guy with your left stick, and you'd have to probably jump with R1 or R2, because I have to believe that you're shooting and aiming with the right stick somehow. It looks like a really fun game to play. I'm just really curious about how you control this unique animal. Unfortunately for me, it's coming to Switch and and PC only June 20th. No indications that I've found that it's coming to any other platforms, but I just have to hope that that's a timed exclusive deal and that it will be coming eventually to PS4 and for other players, Xbox One. So those were the highlights from Devolver Digital. Moving on, limited run games. I'm not particularly a collector of physical game, media. The only time I'll, go out of my way to collect something physical is if it's not available digital to me. But limited run specializes in creating limited run physical editions of games that are normally only available digitally or have historically only been available digitally. And this was like even more than Devolver Digital, like a can-do attitude type of digital showcase. They were definitely, lampooning the press conference, but their budget was clearly lower than what Devolver Digital had to work with, and I think it played up the charm of this thing. And watching it, they had some great moments where they're like superimposed on a stage that's completely digital, and then when they'll pan to the audience, it's all just like 2D, flat, motionless, stock art images of people, but there'd be maybe one guy that's on the limited run staff that would be out there going, yeah. And so it was really charming to watch the whole thing. The things that caught my connection were few and far between, and they both actually, they came near the end, both of them actually. The first one was Shenmue 3 Collector's Edition, which Shenmue has a big cult following. It was a big deal to see Shenmue 3 getting announced as being in production, and so I'm not interested in Shenmue myself, but I did think it was interesting because I know there's such a passionate following for Shenmue and fans that are really excited to see Shenmue 3 coming out, and so to find out that Limited Run is doing a special Collector's Edition I thought was noteworthy. But by far the biggest announcement, especially when at the beginning of their show they said, hey, if you're looking for like big announcements of big games from big properties like Star Wars and stuff, just turn us off. We don't have that stuff for you. We're just the little guys, But lo and behold, at the very end of their digital showcase, they promoted the fact that they are going to be releasing a series of collector editions of Star Wars games. Let me actually run down the list here of all of their planned releases. Now, GameSpot, when they reported on this, the language they used, it's made it sound like it was a collection of games, as though it's going to be one collection, one disc or cartridge that's going to have all these on it, and that's not the case. The way they presented it was a little bit vague and strange. I really wish that they had a sizzle reel of showing clips from a bunch of classic Star Wars games, but they didn't put the names of them on the screen as each one popped on and showed some of its footage, and so I really had to just kind of guess in some cases what platforms these games were on. But the full list of games that Limited Run plans to release in physical form, each one, as I understand it, will be its own physical release. It's not going to be one release that collects many of them or more than one as far as I know, but the games include Star Wars, Star Wars Bounty Hunter, Star Wars Dark Forces, Star Wars Episode 1 Racer, Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back, Star Wars Jedi Knight, Star Wars Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Outcast, Star Wars Jedi Knight Jedi Academy. Do I need to keep saying Star Wars before all of these? I'm going to keep saying it. Star Wars Racer Revenge, Star Wars Rebel Assault, Star Wars Shadow of the Empire, Star Wars TIE Fighter, and Star Wars X-Wing. As far as I can tell, all of these except for two are available digitally, either on the PlayStation 4, I didn't check with the Xbox One, or on Steam or GOG.com. The only two that I couldn't find anywhere were Star Wars and Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back, which I think are either NES games or were released during that era and have kind of an 8-bit style to them. So, but maybe you guys know another place that you can get those. But in any case, if you're interested in getting these games in a physical form, keep your eye on Limited Run games. The first one that they're going to be releasing is Star Wars Bounty Hunter for the PlayStation 4. That's coming June 28th. Just as a topic that may be of interest to you, if you're thinking about collecting, I'm not a collector myself, but I know some geeks are. We can be very passionate about collecting, and we can have big collections. We can have bookshelves behind us like I do that have, a bunch of our nerdy things on it. And the question can sometimes come to our minds or be posed to us by others. Isn't that materialism? Isn't that just kind of like coveting things of this world? And what is collecting, in terms of what Scripture has to say about it? And so for those interested in that topic, I produced a video a while back called Is Collecting a Sin? I'll try to put a link to it in the video description. Otherwise, you can go to youtube.com/christiangeekcentral and just search collecting, or again, Is Collecting a Sin? And that video will hopefully be useful to you. Let's see here. Moving along now, after Limited Run came Kind of Funny's game showcase. And boy, I normally don't think they're even kind of funny as I watch them. I keep track of their show because they're a valuable news source for me. But this time they actually were a little bit funny for me. They got a couple chuckles out of me now and then. So good on them for that. To make my cold heart find something funny. The games that popped out to me, and I mean, there was a ton of games. There's a ton of games. So if you're interested in kind of knowing what indie games are out there, they give you a nice clip of a whole bunch of them, and even a quick description of what each game basically is, so that you're not just looking at a sizzle reel clip and wondering what the crap is that game all about. So I really thought that content-wise and information-wise, they packed a lot of good stuff in this digital event. The ones that stuck out to me would be the first one, Looking for Heels, which is going to be, I think it currently is on Steam Early Access, and the whole premise of this one, it's kind of an 8-bit style, 16-bit style, top-down, real-time RPG experience where you are the healer leading your party instead of a warrior, a knight, or a mage or something like that. You're the healer, and you bring other party members with you that kind of have basic AI behaviors that you can now and then select other activities for them to do, but they, I think, have default behaviors, and then you're also healing them along the way, and so it's a little bit of a, I also want to say like RTS dungeon crawler type of thing, but that looks interesting to me. It doesn't look like it's coming to console anytime soon, but it is in Steam Early Access now, and because it's an RPG and a dungeon crawler, it caught my attention. The next one that grabbed my attention was The Sinking City, coming out June 27th, and I think that's multi-platform release. It's coming to PS4, I know, at some point, if not June 27th. And this one's interesting to me because it's looking like an RPG type thing in a Cthulhu setting. And I'm always kind of, in theory, interested in like Cthulhu type stuff, but I'm usually more interested in movies that play on those themes or use that property. And I haven't run into a video game yet that at the end of the day made me interested enough to go out and purchase it or even to give it a try. And The Sinking City, it does look a little bit like, I don't want to say rough around the edges, but definitely kind of mid-tier level in terms of budget. And I still want to know a significant amount more about it. I want to see more gameplay to figure out if it's going to be for me, but in the meantime, it did get my attention. Another one that surprised me with how much it intrigued me was called Police Stories. This is coming September 9th to consoles, and it looks like a top-down Hotline Miami-inspired type of gameplay, but instead of just, kicking down doors and blowing away whoever's there, you are playing police officers, and so you are not allowed to shoot first. You have to go into a room and see if you can de-escalate the situation even, or at the very least you have to wait for the other guy to pull out his gun before you or your, it looks like an AI-controlled partner, are allowed to fire. And so you have to make those quick decisions about what's going on in this situation, how can I de-escalate this and get this guy in handcuffs, but it looks also very fast-paced, so you have to make very quick decisions about, is it time to fire or not? Can I de-escalate? And there's different tactics that are involved, but again, it looks fairly fast-paced, and so I don't have confidence that it's necessarily going to be the game for me, but it just the premise was, and the type of gameplay was really intriguing to me. The next one that stood out to me was Stone Shard. This is coming to PC and consoles in early access in 2019. November 7th, it's coming, I saw on a separate trailer, to early access on PC. I'm not sure if it's also getting an early access release November 7th on consoles or not. But anyway, so I probably won't be interested in this one until it's got its full release, because I don't really like early access that feels like paying someone to be their beta tester for them. But this one is basically a roguelike dungeon crawler game, but with a nice graphical overlay to the whole thing, including like your items and your character. Again, it's in that kind of 16-bit style, but with some nice modern lighting and effects added to it. And it also looks like there's a bit of a story involved. There's some dialogue choices that, as far as I could tell, and the way that you behave in the world affects whether or not you're going to bring the world to light in an era of prosperity again, or if you're going to cast it into darkness by the way you just go around and pillage and take all the resources and do whatever you want, you know. So definitely I'm intrigued. I'm always, that's another one, you know, along with like Lovecraftian type games. I'm always in theory interested in roguelike games, but at the end of the day, I'm usually turned off by just kind of the stiffness or the rough aesthetic of it, or the simplistic aesthetic of it. And this one could be something that pulls me in. I'll be really interested to see how it controls on console, because the trailers I've seen look very much mouse and keyboard oriented, so we will see. And then the last game that got my attention, coming to PC and console in early access in early 2020, is Undying. And this has a very kind of, I want to say it's almost harkening back to the PlayStation 1, where it's like lower polygon and like low textures, almost like if you remember the game by That Dragon Cancer. It's got a simplistic graphical style, but not so like, you know, not ugly like a True Blue, you know, PS1 game would look right now. Anyway, you are playing a mother who is trying to survive, or help her son survive, I should say, in a zombie post-apocalypse. And the premise is that you start the game having been bitten and infected by a zombie. And so your time throughout this game is limited. You only have so many days to help your son survive, teach him how to survive before you turn yourself and become a zombie. And so he's always following you around. He's a young boy, and you're always protecting him. And it looked, you know, I mean, it looked like heart-wrenching, you know, as I watched this trailer, especially in one brief clip, one brief flash that looked like you might even be, you know, as a zombie trying to fight off others, protecting your son. Or maybe, yeah, I don't know. It's, yeah, so it just looks like a really compelling use of the zombie apocalypse concept amidst a sea of really tired out post-apocalyptic zombie type games. So yeah, definitely interested in Undying, PC and console, early access 2020. I didn't make a wish list for each one of these digital events, but I did have a general wish for all of them, and that was that I'd love to see RPGs and one title that both appeals to me and surprises me for its ambition and scope on an indie or AA budget. Well, that's a partial fulfillment. I wasn't surprised by anything for its ambition or scope given its indie or AA budget, but I did see a couple of RPGs, at least one of which was very interesting to me. And Carrion, Stone Shard, and Undying are all games I'm very interested in learning more about. So I am really glad that I took time to watch these showcases. And if I didn't say anything that caught your interest, you might consider watching them and see if your style of game will appear, because they each had a lot to offer, especially the Kinda Funny showcase. All right, that's all for now. Still coming, my final thoughts, favorite games, and hidden gems of E3 2019. And don't forget to check out Spirit Blade Legacy Edition, our genre-bending sci-fi fantasy audio drama, available for free right now at youtube.com/christiangeekcentral. Thanks. Bye-bye. I've created some new tiers for our Patreon. On top of many of our original perks, I've added Discord live events, spoiler chat videos, and more. You can get all the info at patreon.com/spiritbladeproductions.